Hello. Today we are going to be talking about Chapter 4, and the subject matter is compliance in Title IX. The principle of rules compliance is established in the NCAA Constitution in Article 2.8, which outlines the association's responsibility to assist member institutions in their efforts to follow the regulations. Article 2.8 describes institutional responsibility as follows, quote, "Each institution shall comply with all applicable rules and regulations of the association in the conduct of its intercollegiate athletics programs. It shall monitor its programs to assure compliance and to identify and report to the NCAA instances in which compliance has not been achieved." Every year, the NCAA publishes an updated edition of the compliance manuals for each of the three divisions. Incredibly, the Division I manual now has nearly 450 pages of rules and regulations. First and foremost, athletics administrators at every NCAA member institutions are responsible for understanding the manual and all the other applicable materials. In addition, the athletic administrators are also in charge of facilitating compliance by all other staff members, the student athletes, boosters, and any other individuals representing the institution. Because of the depth and detail of NCAA legislation, coaches and athletes don't need to memorize the entire manual front to back. Compliance education falls under the responsibility of each school's compliance personnel. This education is vital because the rules are complex and there are often changes that can impact programs. As many of you may recall, all student athletes are required to participate in compliance workshops prior to each season. I definitely remember that coaches are required to take an annual rules exam, and this includes head coaches to assistant coaches to graduate assistants to volunteers. They all have to take an annual rules exam if they have any sort of recruiting responsibilities. The exam is 30 questions long, and in order to pass, the coach must correctly answer 80% or higher. And I have to tell you, these tests are actually really, really hard. But I always passed. In order to satisfy the requirements of NCAA bylaw 11.1.2.1, the head coach for each sport is responsible for creating an atmosphere of rules compliance and for monitoring the activities of his or her staff. Therefore, at least in theory, a coach can be held responsible for the actions of the individuals within the program. However, it is interesting that many times when a rules violation makes the news, the head coach claims that they didn't know anything about it, and somehow that is accepted as an excuse. For example, think of Ohio State football stars selling their memorabilia or Louisville basketball recruits partying with strippers. It seems like there's an enforcement disconnect somewhere, don't you think? Recruiting is a vital part of the pursuit of competitive excellence in intercollegiate athletics. However, it is also many coaches' least favorite part of the job. For example, Tom Izzo, head men's basketball coach at Michigan State, has described recruiting as feeling like a used car salesman, and he's been quoted as saying that recruiting is literally the worst part of his job. Most coaches would agree that, for one thing, recruiting is extremely time-consuming. Coaches spend hours communicating with recruits, visiting recruiting websites, going to games and showcases, helping recruits and their families with the admission process and financial aid and scholarships, and the time commitment is often at night, and it's on weekends, and it's over holidays, since those are the times when games and showcases are often held. Recruiting is also really complicated. Each division and each sport have unique contact periods and specific rules. To help coaches stay on track, the NCAA releases a recruiting calendar for Division I and II sports that have specific recruiting time periods. The calendars designate dates for contact, for evaluation, for quiet periods, which is no in-person off-campus contact, and dead periods, no in-person contact at all. Division III institutions have fewer restrictions, there's no dead periods, for example, than coaches at the Division I and II levels, and so that's nice. However, on the other hand, Division III coaches don't have scholarships to offer their recruits, and that makes it hard to entice top-rated recruits to D3 schools. We're going to switch gears a bit and talk about Title IX at this point and for the next few slides. Most people in athletics have a vague understanding that Title IX is related to gender equity. However, it's a complicated issue and it impacts all athletic programs that receive some form of federal funding. Therefore, it's important for athletic administrators, and particularly male athletic administrators, that they don't dismiss Title IX as just a women's issue for the compliance office to worry about. It's more than that, and it's critical that athletic administrators understand what Title IX is, what it's not, and how it affects their institution. Basically, Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972 is a federal law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of a person's sex. Specifically, the following 37 words are now part of the Constitution of the United States. Quote, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." Unquote. Broadly speaking, Title IX offers legal protection from any form of sex discrimination in public or private educational programs that receive federal funding. Since most colleges receive funding for financial aid from the federal government, they're covered by Title IX. The law addresses discrimination in admissions, counseling, discrimination against pregnant or married students, sexual harassment, and inequities in extracurricular activities. From its inception, Title IX's application to intercollegiate athletics has been attacked. Critics have labeled Title IX as an unfair quota system that limits opportunities for men. However, many researchers support the conclusion that many administrators are actually using Title IX as a scapegoat. The reality is, ADs will budget for major expenditures in football and men's basketball, and their argument is that they need to spend money on those programs since those are the programs that are the ones with the potential to make the most money. However, when the resources and opportunities are depleted for the other sports in the department, they then will blame Title IX for any cuts that need to happen. It would be a really rare situation for an AD to actually say, hey, we're cutting men's volleyball because, quite frankly, they're not as valuable to us, to our department, as football. Instead, the more common claim made by administrators is that, as a result of Title IX, they need to add women's sports and cut men's sports. I feel like I hear that all the time. The reality is that athletic departments need to look at their budgets like a pie, and they need to work to divide the resources in a way to ensure that everybody gets a slice of the pie. It doesn't mean that everybody gets an equal slice, but it means that everybody gets something. In 1979, the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare issued a policy interpretation that still stands as the gold standard of compliance measurement in athletics. This document outlined the way in which institutions can demonstrate effective accommodation of students' interests and abilities. This method has become known as the three-prong test. Some of you have probably already heard about it. Though it's highly contested, it has been supported time and time again in legal cases because it provides flexibility for an institution in how it chooses to demonstrate effective accommodation. Prong 1, providing athletics participation opportunities that are substantially proportionate to the undergraduate student enrollment. Prong 2, demonstrating a history and continuing practice of expanding opportunities for the underrepresented sex. Prong 3, full and effective accommodation of the interests and abilities of the underrepresented sex. This slide is a visual representation of the 1979 interpretation of Title IX, including all three areas of compliance. These areas include 1, participation and the 3 prongs, 2, scholarships, and 3, other benefits. At Regis, one of the things that I hear frequently is that Regis Athletics is violating Title IX because it does not offer locker rooms for its male athletes. While I agree, it is a problem, and it should be a priority on the list of future athletic facility upgrades. It actually does not mean that Regis is violating Title IX. The reason for this is that Title IX only requires an institution to prove that it is satisfying one of the 3 areas of compliance. So even though Regis doesn't provide adequate locker rooms for its male athletes, and if you're looking on the slide, this bullet can be found within the other benefits area in the box on the right side, our athletic program does meet the requirements of at least one of the 3 prongs, which can be found on the left side of the slide. And therefore, the athletic program is actually in compliance of Title IX. I still think that we should get locker rooms, though, for the record.